So I'm here with Laura West, and the first question that I have for you is, what do you consider a soul team?
I love that question. So I started using the term name soul team to encompass all entities on the other side that would make up your quote unquote soul team. So like spirit guides, ancestors, past loved ones, etc. Whatever feels intuitively right to the person. I don't limit it. I don't say it's only this or only that because nothing's black and white when it comes to spirit. So to me, when I was in my spiritual awakening number two, which happened more recently, where I spearheaded and really dove into psychic mediumship and then into writing my book and podcast, blah, 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 and really honing in on my intuition. I was learning more about spirit guides and angels and ETs even and ancestors and all these great loving souls on the other side that could be helping us. And so it became very overwhelming. And instead of me having to decide, okay, well, who should I call to help me? I just gave them that umbrella term of soul team so that they can decide who was going to come and help me, who I was going to need for whatever it was I was looking for help for or guidance or support for. So I started using that term soul team to encompass all those loving entities on the other side that are on my team. So you have a soul team, Lily, your listeners have a soul team. We all have soul teams. It's just a nice umbrella term to encompass all of them.
And I feel like it's a great equalizer too, soul teams, because
Ah,
so many people have this. Well, there are your ancestors, there are your spirit guides, there are your animal guides, there are, your loved ones who have passed. And people, I have found like they have to put a qualifier with it. It's like, okay, well, your spirit guides, they're the ones who are there to help and guide you. And so they're at the top. And then, but it's not a pecking order. It's like, no, it's a team. Everybody works together. Everyone
yeah.
does stuff together. It's teamwork because it really does take away the ego with it too. With working with any of the helpers on the other side, it's not going, well, I need this person for this or this person for this or this entity for this situation. It's, I almost view it, like a sports bench. And you're just like, and finance, who's up? Come on, baby, step into the field. And then whatever ancestor, spirit guide, anyone from the soul team, the ones that are good at that, all stand up and then move to the field.
Yeah.
And they're like, now we're going to give it our all because they know that's what they're meant for, as opposed to people guessing, because that is something that people do. They're like, well, I have Annabelle as my spirit guide or whatever. I just guessed that name. It's a random name. It's not one of mine. But and they're like, okay, so I asked her a life's purpose question, but she's meant for like relationships and connection to people. She's not going to have the right answer. So when people like they hyper focus on one, it's almost like they're doing themselves a disservice
Yeah.
by not being like, no, there's a whole team. And whoever has, once you ask one, what if the one next to them has a better answer or a different perspective? Like, you're taking away so much when you hyper focus on a hierarchy and being so specific. I find that with people. So I love soul teams.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Well, and I do find that spirit can be every team's different, but they can be very literal too. So, there's this whole thing of, well, you just have to ask. Well, they could be so literal that you ask maybe one specific member of your soul team, but you didn't ask the right one. I mean, I don't know. It's just, are we humanizing them too while we have this discussion? And are we just thinking too much into it? See, already just trying to talk about the possibilities of what if we didn't use those terms and it was up to us to decide. It's already like very stressful and too much when we already have enough going on in this human life experience on planet Earth. So I love the use of the umbrella term. Let them figure it out, for us.
And they have your best interest at heart. That's the other thing.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
there is no, trickery. I know in some cultures, you know, there is that kind of thing, but not in either of the practices that we do. Like our soul teams are there for us. There are cheerleaders, there are support, there are guides, there are advisors, there are all these things. And we don't have to worry once we open it up. Like, are we with our human ego complicating our healing process by not utilizing our soul team?
Mm, yeah. I mean, I feel like, again, every situation's so different. You could have no knowledge of your soul team, or you just, believe in one spiritual entity, or even just God, or whatever. And you still will get divine intervention. You'll still get intuitive hits. Don't turn left, go right. Don't buy this, do that. Like, you still will get these intuitive hits regardless of one's knowledge of having a soul team, or knowing who's on their soul team. So there are times when, yeah, you don't have to ask. You will get divine intervention, or synchronicities and things like that. But then there are times where we do have to ask, because, again, sometimes they wait for us to ask, because we've got free will and we have that right to choose whether or not we want that help. So I feel like when I've done readings in the past, I have definitely been told by other people's members of their soul team that, we made an agreement on the other side before you came into this life to intervene if this happens, or intervene when you say this, very specific times of when to intervene, but not to intervene until then, or don't intervene until you ask. So we make up not make up, but we come up with these, like, not not rules. What am I talking about? Like these scenarios of when to come in and when not to. So sometimes, that could be the case as well. It's just, it could be pretty complex, all the possibilities.
Yeah, and we are human, like our souls are infinite, but we are having a human experience, whether we
Hmm.
like it or not. And so our perspective is limited based on that. But our soul teams isn't, especially if you look at it as the team as the whole. Like, that's a bunch of different knowledge and perspectives and help for you. And that makes it so much simpler because it's just so vast that you're just tapping into the one huge conduit instead of like trying to like pinpoint every little thing in it. And I have so in a lot of spirituality, does size matter? Like, I people again, I feel like with your spiritual awakening and spiritual journey as well as your soul teams, when ego gets involved, that's when it's the messiest. That's when you're cock blocking your own success. But it's like, I have met many people who it's, I need to have, oh, I have hundreds of guides. I have hundreds of ancestors who help me. And it's like, that's awesome. But somehow they feel, again, it's that they want the quantity, not the quality. Um, and how do you feel about that? Like, I personally think if you had a soul team of 2, it'd still be awesome versus 200. It's size doesn't matter. It's how you use your team. But not everyone agrees with me. Like, you could be like, no, it has to be 7 at all times. I have no clue. So how do you feel about the size and quantity conundrum that people bring up whenever this stuff comes up?
That's so interesting, because I've actually never had a discussion like this before, as far as the number, and then that equating to more guidance or better guidance. Um, I definitely believe it's the quality that matters, and I don't think that the number is wrong. It's perfect for what it needs to be for that person. And if they feel that the help that they're getting is from hundreds of guides, then that could be the amount of energy that they feel that they are getting assistance from, with whatever it is that they're going through. It could feel like the numbers are in the hundreds. Energy is so fluid and nebulous that I think that it's constantly changing and evolving. So, at times it could feel like a lot and it could feel like hundreds versus other times it may feel a little bit pulled back and maybe they've all left you. It may feel like you're alone. Though that's not the case. They're still there. So, it's definitely I never want to, for those who feel that they're, really intuitively feeling that, I never want to downplay or take that away from them. It's not for me to do so. So I think that, the number really doesn't matter. It's the quality of the support and help that you're getting. And when it comes from spirit, it's always going to be the best quality. So there's no worry about that. But if, as humans, if we want to get into that nitty-gritty of there being hundreds or thousands or more, if that's what that person needs, to to get through that trial or whatever it is that they're going through to require that much support, then, by all means. But everyone's truth's so different. So I couldn't sit here and tell you, no, that's not true, or no, that's not how it is, because spirit has showed me from all the readings that I've done and, connecting with my own guide, Jason, that, um, you would think it was one way, and then spirit will tell you something of how it could be totally different, and then you're back to square one where you're like, I really don't know anything, right? Sometimes more answers can produce more questions. So, I find that interesting that some people, like the idea of having hundreds, and I'm sure that many of us do have that many, because again, it's vast. Um, but it doesn't mean that their quality is any less than somebody else's team. So it just could be different is all. And their personal quest and their personal journey in life is different and requires different sorts of guidance and help from someone else. So it's almost like comparing apples to oranges, I suppose. Yes, they're all fruit, but they're not the same fruit. And
Mhm.
so you can't say that, one is better than the other because they're too different to compare like that.
Yeah, I think, you're right, and it's getting to what authenticity is and what's really happening, and not the ego putting a value on something that's not real. And that, with working with soul teams, is a huge deal. Like, they don't want to work with your ego. They do not have time to work with the second guessing bukkake that
Yeah.
that comes up. They are like, no, we're here to help you, your soul, your authentic self, your path. Absolutely. So
Yeah.
it's almost like throwing up roadblocks in your own way when you come at your soul team from an ego that has to have a value on it. And that's something that people, if any of the listeners are coming at it from ego and you're self-aware enough to notice, one, great job, yay. Two, reach out, ask questions. You want to work through the ego so that you can actually get the real juicy work done, type thing.
Like the
And
12 steps to spiritual awakening.
yes, yes. So how does, we've talked about like the soul team as a whole
Hmm.
versus, and it has a bunch of different things. So soul team versus spirit guide. So a spirit guide can be a member of your soul team.
Yeah,
Um, but that's not the only one. I feel like soul teams aren't meant to be limited. And
totally.
and when you go in, it's because, like we discussed, there's ancestors, there's ascended masters, there's pets who have passed, everyone
Yeah.
wants Lassie back in the picture, let's be honest. And there's your loved ones who have passed, and then there's like guides, and it's all these things. And it just seems like limiting to because there are some people who like soul team, okay, spirit guides, that's the only hunk that's in it. So how do you, I don't want to say combat, that seems like a very aggressive word, but how do you work around, it's like, no, no, the team is everybody, the whole team plays, the whole team plays, not just the quarterback, the whole team plays. How do you deal with that with your clients?
Oh, well, I find that it's us humans that like to label these energies that help us. So I don't discredit. In fact, if one person, I go with it. So like if my sitter or client is saying that their let me see, for instance, that their guide is like their mom who passed. Well, one, it's not for me to say that she's not a guide. I don't know the workings of what was planned out for her. But two, then I go with that because mom can certainly be there helping her along in her journey. She's a spirit, she's guiding her. So, yeah, technically, if we could get down to the nitty gritty of the terms, she is a spirit guide. But I think that the labeling is for us. So, I like to go along with it. If somebody likes to call, source God or vice versa, I go with it because that's it's just the label that we give them. And so I'm such a firm believer in people learning to trust their own intuition that it would feel very wrong for me to then in a reading say, nope, that's not right, even though your intuition is telling you that. In fact, it'd be the opposite. Like, that's so great that you're listening to your intuition. And if that's what it feels to you, that's perfect. That's what it needs to be. It's not for me to say that it isn't. So, I like to go along with what the sitter or client feels, and I tap into that, and we go with that. Because again, the names and the labels, that's for us in our humanness to, in a way, compartmentalize and to uh, feel like relationship wise, because that's what we as humans we want relationships with people. So spirit's no different. So it's just a way for us to feel that relationship with them. So I'm totally for it.
Yeah, it's the not getting hung up on the semantics, because
Yeah.
if we're being honest, so many different words mean the same thing,
Hmm.
and we almost block out certain things because we use certain terminology from getting connections even with people, like we discussed before we hit record. Someone can word something a very specific way and it's like, "Ooh, you're gonna hate me," is your first response, because it's like you use terminology that ties very very strongly to a prejudice that I live in. And
Sure.
so it's getting hung up on the semantics is not where the energy should go. And like, obviously, if it's really detrimental, we step in, we gently correct. It's like, is that your soul or is that your ego? Because I find if it's your soul saying that your mom is your spirit guide, yeah, rock it out. But if it's your ego saying that because
Like
it needs to have a
hoping and willing it.
validation. Yep,
Yeah.
because it's like that's the only way the advice from your mother is going to be legitimate, is if she's one of your guides. It's like, that's not.
Mm,
He could just be on the other side saying put more garlic in the soup. Like, it is just as valid come from a spirit guide as it is from your mother. And
yeah.
so I think for me that's a huge something to discern with clients and everything. It's like, is this your authentic self? If it is, we will rock it out, we'll do whatever. But if it's your ego trying to put value on something, if it is a misinterpretation, or people honestly mainstream terminology, there are so many times people use terms that just aren't accurate for the situation, but
Hmm.
it's what they saw on a TikTok once. And so, like, this is what it's going to look like. It's like, not 99% of the time, it's not going to look like that. So it's kind of being, they are the authority in their life, but we are the authority on this industry and this path and this modality. So it's like, we have to hold that space. It's like,
Hmm.
yes, we want you to follow your intuition, but the second your ego gets involved, I'm going to smack it out of your hand. At least that's what I do. Sometimes it's just set it down, just set it down. And you lightly pat it down. Other times I have like chucked, but no, don't do that. And so that's as professionals, as experts in our field, that's what the beautiful challenge that we get to do is to discern with our clients what is authentic soul and what is ego, and then just course correct as it goes so that they can actually use their soul teams the way they're meant to be used, which is, like you said, completely unique to every single person.
Yeah.
No soul team should look the same. No spirit guide's going to look the same. And there's no, like, obviously ethically and safely are duh, but short of that, there's no wrong way to do it. There's no like, oh, if it's done, if I follow a spirit guide over my ancestors, like I'm doing that wrong, or it's not. And I
Yeah.
think that's a huge thing with working with soul teams and doing the kind of work that we do in general. As long as you're safe and sane about it, there's no wrong way to heal. There's no wrong way to use your spirit teams. Like there's not. And that's something that, needs to be made clear, like in the first session, usually with clients. It's like, you're not fucking up. I promise. It's okay. It's okay. Don't worry about
Yeah.
it. So, can you tell us a personal story about how you used your soul teams? Let's get intimate. Let's do a
Mm.
personal story.
Yeah. So let me think about a good one that comes first. Okay, so I like to share this story because it was pretty profound. So writing my book was definitely a soul team guided thing from start to finish.
And the name
So
of your book is, come on,
it's
shameless
called
plug.
Guided. It's called Guided. How perfect. So I had, I think everybody at one point it crosses their mind, writing a book might be kind of cool, but then for myself, it kind of stopped there. I never gave it much more thought. I didn't even think it was going to happen in this lifetime. And I had a psychic tell me, make sure you're writing down all of your experiences because I see you writing a book. And she meant my spiritual experiences. Because I see you writing a book. I said, oh, that's interesting. All right. Like, I think, some of us, we journal and wonder how that will translate into a book, it's okay. It seems interesting. This stuff was interesting to me. Would other people see it interesting? We'll see. But I didn't really, give it much thought at that point because then the ego came in and I was like, gosh, like one, it seems like a lot of work. Two, like, is my life even interesting enough for people to want to read about it? So it kind of put it on the back burner. And then maybe, I don't know, couple months, 6 months later, a friend of mine, a colleague, asked me if I had been writing down all my spiritual experiences because she saw me writing a book. And so I said, all right, that's two people, two separate times, two people who don't even know each other said the same thing to me. I get it. I hear you. I'm going to be writing this book. Okay, let's do it. And as soon as I said, okay, let's do it, then I couldn't wait to start because it was crazy. It was like this switch like flipped from no inkling or desire to do it to then me saying, all right, let's do it. And giving that permission, it was like the floodgates opened up and I couldn't wait. I started right then. So I grabbed my laptop and I opened it up and I opened up a Google Doc and I'm sitting there with my fingers on the keyboard, just staring at this blank screen, thinking like, well, now what? So I had already been channel writing by that point. So I said, you know what? I was like, I know like my guides, my team, they want me to write this book. So I'm going to let them channel through me what it is I'm supposed to write about. So that's what I did. I started by channel writing, just whatever came through. That's just what I started writing. And then, ultimately it started to make a little bit more sense, the direction I was going with it. So I got a lot done on that first day. So I credit a lot my spirit guides at that time for giving me that guidance. Could have been anyone on my team, but again, the labels for me. And then started writing some more as the days followed. And then I was like, oh gosh, started doing a bit of research into actually publishing and all that. And I was getting very overwhelmed, like quarrying and agents and traditional publishing, self-publishing, hybrid publishing, and then, the copyright stuff and the Library of Congress. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to be finished before I even begin because it was very overwhelming. So I looked into hiring a book coach, somebody who could guide me through the process. And what was great was she also did developmental editing, which was a bonus. And so I had a good friend of mine who had a connection, and she was friends with this book coach, connected us, loved her, and was, making the decision to sort of put the small investment into having a book coach. And that was the first time I invested in anything like that. So I had, my reservations and things. And so at that time, I asked my grandmother who had passed for a sign. So another member of my soul team, I asked her for a sign that I was making the right choice in going this route. And it was the same day that I got 3 signs from her, like all throughout the day, strong signs, strong signs. Like there was no doubt in my mind. The first sign that I got from her brought me to tears of joy because I was like, oh my gosh, she passed 20 plus years ago and she was still like right there. It was just so warm and comforting to me. So she gave me that extra oomph to say, okay, I'm going to do it. And then at that point, it was just a lot of following my intuition, finding a hybrid publisher who helped me to self-publish while working with a publishing company. So that's how that kind of worked. So giving me full rights to my work and everything, which was great. And so finding a publisher who was in the spiritual realm, so that was also wonderful. And then she had an editor that she worked with who helped with my like copyright editing and all of that good stuff. And just really through that process, the whole process of writing the book to then it, picking the cover and then having it out into the world was just very much intuitively guided by the other side, by my team. And at the end, after it had been published, I got the validation that, that it was all right.
Mhm.
Um, because it was interesting. The I was on a Girl Scout camping trip with my daughter and her troop, and uh my book published officially on Amazon during that weekend. And what was interesting was my good girlfriend, whose daughter was also in the same troop, found this pathway of lights where we were camping, and she said, "Laura." She says that looks like the cover of your book. Like, let's take a picture of you standing in front of that. And so the cover of my book, which of course I don't have with me here, has like a pathway of little lights through a sort of a dark path leading to a bright light off in the distance, like those little intuitive breadcrumbs taking you through the crap, leading you to the light where, where you're meant to go. Same with this pathway of lights where we were camping. So it was just that confirmation that I needed from the end, the validation that, yep, you did good, you did right. You published it, as scary as it was. You published it and you shared that with the world. So to me, that's a good example from my personal life and personal journey of how I was tuned in enough, open enough, and then followed through with the guidance that I received to know that I was indeed being guided and helped through that entire process of writing the book.
Yes, I love that. And that it's your soul team helps you through the whole journey. It's not like
Yes.
a pit stop. And then it's like, now fly, little birdie. They're like, no, you're gonna fly, but we're gonna have our hands underneath you the whole time. Yeah,
Yep.
we got you, we got you, we got you. I love that. So mine is I'm gonna use the one for my romantic life
Ooh.
because that one's fun. Um
Relatable, I'm sure.
it's when I was 20. I went to Chicago and did like an intensive training with soul advanced energy healing and stuff. And one of the like childhood wounds that we healed, I had asked, like, because finding love and connection after trauma is difficult, right? And so I had asked, like, in this deep meditation, my guides, like, I need a warning sign when it's just not meant to happen with somebody. And the woman who was like my partner who was facilitating this healing was like, oh, the wind blows, how about a feeling in your stomach? And I was like, that's indigestion. That's no, I need something so obvious. And I was like, I want lights on a cop car. I want
Oh,
lights
I
on a cop
love the specifics. Yes, love it.
car. And she was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, yeah, it don't gotta be spiritual. I want it to hit me like a 2x4 in the face every time. That is the only way it's going to work for me. And that's a huge thing, is that your signs don't have to be subtle. Like, be
Yeah.
aware, and that'll make them more obvious. But everyone who's like, it needs to be the wind blowing. I'm like, no, you live in the windy city. You my goodness. So it's um so every time I would like go on a date with somebody, when I was driving home, I would be very aware. And if there were ever was ever a cop car anywhere around, they didn't have to pull me over, anywhere around that I saw flashing cop lights, I would break it off. And every
Wow.
time it was true. And so that was like starting the journey of like, okay, use your guides to help you with every aspect of your life.
Mhm.
My grandpa had very high standards for all his children and grandchildren, and I still have the list of qualifications to date me. It's way longer than you think it should be. And I was several years ago, God, I want to say almost 10 years ago. It's been a while. He came to me in a vision and he was like, "You will not find love on a dating app, so there's no point to use them." And I was like, "Oh wow." And I deleted every dating app I had and have not been on them since. Like,
Wow.
he was like, "Nope, it's not, you will not find the right person, so why do it?" Uh and then
Like the right person ever or through an app?
through an app.
Okay. I was like,
You
oh
know,
gosh, that's,
no,
that's
I'm
so.
still a hopeless romantic. I still have hope. Um, and then I had just started like, you know how you're not dating, it's like right before dating. You're like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, am I gonna date this person or not?"
Yeah.
And a vision came to me in a meditative state of my first love, and he came an inch from my face. So we were almost nose to nose. And he just said, "No, not worthy. Stop it." And the next day I texted the guy and was like, "Nope, not interested anymore." And the guy turned out to be a raving loon. The guy turned out to be like, I could just follow you home type of person. And it's like, oh, get hit by a bus. And so I'm like, oh, thank you. So like these guides telling me, and I think that's another thing, your soul team, your guides, your whatever. If you answer to affirmation, it is wonderful to hear yes. If you answer to no, much better. I will answer, it's just my energy. It's not negativity, but I will answer to no, don't date that guy before I will answer to date that guy
Mm.
type thing. My energy will, so like my spirit guides are big on no, don't do that. I'll be like, oh, okay. And then I'll naturally go the correct way. I'll naturally take a step back, turn, and just start hopping down the road. But if they were like, go this way, I'd be like, are you sure? Did you ask directions? Let's get a second opinion. But if they said, no, don't do that. Don't touch the fire. It's hot. I'd be like, okay, I'm just going to not touch the fire now. And I'll be fine with that. I'd be fine with that. So it's learning to listen to your soul team, how you receive energy. If it's subtlety, great. The wind blows, you got a flutter in your heart. Fabulous. Some of us, like me, need a 2x4 across the face in the way of police lights.
Every time. Yeah.
You need a guide this close to your face, an inch away from your face, saying, don't do that. And that's what works for me. Some people, it's affirming, like your path was like, yes, do this. Yes, do this. And mine are usually, don't do that. Don't touch that. You know better. And then I'll immediately pull back and then just do the right thing because it's like, oh, that option was taken away. Now I know what to do. Um, so no, through all of that, through like different spiritual and psychic sessions, people have told me like the exact blueprint of who I'm meant to like marry and date. And so now if that's not met, I won't even date them. I'm like, hey, you didn't meet the criteria the spirit guides laid out. Cause you know, there's that girly thing. It's usually feminine people who do it where they write the list, like they have to be 6 foot, they have to be this, they have to be, and they have that list. No, my guides gave me that list. And height is actually not on it.
Hmm.
Yep. Memory was. They have to have a very good memory. That made the list. The guides were like, they have to have a
Does
good
that balance out for you then? Is that because it balances for you?
No, well,
Or
I'm an elephant. I will remember
ah,
everything at all times. And so people who don't remember stuff, I'm like, were you wounded at some point? Was there a head injury? How come you don't remember? And I get not everyone has a creepy memory, but I have a creepy memory. So I need someone who's at least above average in memory. So I'm not just the hard drive. storing all the information. I need them to also know. So I'm not going, do you remember we had this conversation? I
Oh.
love my mother, but 3 conversations in, I'm like, okay, this is now the 4th time we've talked about this. And she's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, really? Okay. So they're like, you need someone who you don't have to do that with, because I am finding out that's a rarity to have like really good memory.
Especially the older we get and the more stuff we have on our plate.
Yes. And so it's just interesting to be like, huh, all right. That was one that definitely made the list. They have to be handy. Like they have to be able to
Sure.
accomplish. They don't got to build me a house, but they better know how to fix the garbage disposal. Like it's those kinds of things that the spirit guides are like, this is what you need to be happy though. Like they don't gotta be 6 foot. I'm like, as long as they're tall, I'm 5'3". As long as they're taller than me, 5'3.5", I'm chilling.
Yeah,
And
you're good.
that's about everybody, you know? Men and women. 5'3" is not a high bar to come across. Um, but no, so it's through all of those experiences that compiled to make like, okay, this is what I will do, and this is what I will date, and this is how I'll be happy. And it wasn't just one thing. It wasn't just one spirit guide. It wasn't just one encounter. It's, and I think that's a misconception for some people with working with their soul team. They're like, oh, it'll always be Steve who comes through and tells me stuff with this. It's like, no, it could be your grandpa, it could be your first love, it could be a spirit guide, it could be, there's so many options if you don't limit yourself. There's so much more knowledge, there's so much more help, there's so much more support if you don't limit yourself, but you have to consciously not limit yourself to be able to work with your soul team as effectively as you are meant to, is how I see it personally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it could just be again, Steve is just the name that we need and it doesn't really matter. So it's also hard to say the flip side of that being that um maybe it's not so limiting just because we put a name on it and it could still be whoever needs to come will come through. But it's such it's such a gray, it's so individualized that it's really hard to say it's one way or this way, like you said, because we're all so unique. And going back to your experiences, I think the important thing there that I think is a good takeaway is that you get these intuitive 2x4s in your case, and then you follow through with it. Like you listen to it, especially if it's a no, right? But even so, like that's the big part. It's like spirit did their part, and then now you followed up and did your part. So I think that that's also really important. Trust.
Yeah. And like you said, the follow through. So
Mhm.
your team can guide you, they can support you, they can cheer you on, but they can't do it for you. You do still have free will. So you could ignore your team forever. And it's, you have to be empowered to take the action throughout your life. Whether the guides say yes or no or whatever, it's you making the decision to follow it. And that,
Mhm.
again, like there are just so many misconceptions around spirituality that I love talking about those because God forbid I not correct people. And so it's like, but my guide told me to do it. It's like they're not Santa. They cannot drop. I used to tease my friends and like sit in a chair with my arms open and go, the ideal person will fall into my lap. And they laughed and I'm like, but that's what people want. That's like their spirit guides are going, oh, you'll find love. And then they're sitting there like, okay, fall. Like the book. You had to write the book. I don't know about, you had to move your fingers on the keyboard no matter what message came through, no matter what channeling happened, you actually had to take an
I had
action.
to do the groundwork. Yes. No pun
Yes.
intended. Yeah.
And so people are like, no, it should just magically happen. And I'm like, no, you're the magic. Get up. Do something. Something. So that's something that I notice about people. It's they forget that last important step of them, that they are the important step with creating their life, that no matter who your soul team is, like they're there to help. You still have to do
Yes.
is
Yeah.
a component that's overlooked because the stuff we do is so magical. and so fabulous and so out of this world that people forget that there's a lot of earthbound action that goes into miracles and creating your perfect life that is just everyday stuff that that stuff's magical too, and that helps to manifest everything is the everyday, you know, qualities of self-care and manifesting and everything. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to share about soul teams before we sign off?
I would just like to share that regardless of who you think's on your team or what you call them, that they're all there to love and support and guide and communicate with you on this journey of life in this difficult planet that we live on. And all you have to do is ask. Sometimes you don't even have to ask, they'll just divinely intervene. But, you know, creating and cultivating a relationship with them is fantastic. They love that. I've never met anyone on a soul team that didn't. You know, having them be acknowledged, they love that. To them, the relationship's already there and solid, but it's for us to feel closer to them, to turn to them and ask them for help without sort of thinking twice about it, and creating that strong bond with them. So that's that final message.
I love that. It's all about validation, acknowledgement, and gratitude with the soul team. Like, I love saying thank you. I feel like it's a step that's forgotten a lot of times. It's like thank you
Yeah.
for the thank you for the 2x4. I do appreciate it. Like it's it's a nice thing to have that makes it so obvious. So I think those are really good things. But where can people find you for sessions or your book? Do you have a website that you would like to share with us?
Yeah, I have to always get it because I kind of forget it. So it's Linktree. Linktree is where I just kind of combined everything together so that it makes it easier to find whatever it is the person is looking for. And that is just linktr.ee/guided west.
Guided West. Perfect. Thank you so much, Laura, for coming, talking to us, sharing everything. This has been fabulous. Soul teams are amazing. I cannot wait to talk to you again. I am sure we will have much more to talk
I'm
about
sure.
as time goes on. But thank you so much. And everyone who is watching, remember to like, share, and follow. And if you have any questions, pop them in the comments and we are happy to answer them. We are happy to reach out and take you as clients and help you in whatever way that we can, because that is why we are here. That is what we do. We are the experts in this. We're actually good at what we do. It's very cool. It's awesome. So
Thank
thank you
you.
everyone for watching.